Hello and welcome to another ride review here on ThrillNet. Today I'm going to be reviewing Speed No Limits, which is a roller coaster located at Oakwood Theme Park in Pembrokeshire in Wales. This is another video in the series of videos I'm doing at the moment on reviewing rides, particularly coasters around the world. So make sure you subscribe by clicking the button below and click the bell to enable notifications so you don't miss any of the future videos on this. But yeah, let's get into it. So just give you a bit of background. Oakwood is a smaller park in Wales, but I'm trying to focus my reviews on some of these rides at smaller parks. You'll notice I did Kamali at Flamingo Land a few weeks ago. I know I did Hulk after that, which is at Universal Islands of Adventure, which is a major park, obviously over in Orlando, Florida. But I'm trying to focus on the smaller parks because these are the parks that are at highest risk financially, obviously of going out of business due to this pandemic. So I want to make you guys who maybe aren't aware of these parks aware of them, talk about these rides to encourage you to visit. But yeah, let's get into it. So, Speed No Limits, and the actual no limits at the end of the name, I believe, is because it was created in the coaster simulation game No Limits. It's not a game I've played myself, it's actually a very complex game. I've stuck to Planet Coaster, which is about my level, and some people even find Planet Coaster too hard, but yeah, No Limits really is a difficult game that you need skill to play. But anyway, it is a Gerstlauer Euro-Fighter, so Gerstlauer being the company that manufacture the ride, and it's their Euro-Fighter model. More specifically, it's their Euro-Fighter 600 model. Basically, there are different models of Euro-Fighter, if you didn't know, or sub-models should I say, and the number at the end of them. There's also a custom Euro-Fighter model, which basically is any track layout. There are a series of set track layouts that basically Gerstlauer provide for Eurofighters, and the number relates to the length of the ride in meters. So speed is 600 meters long to be specific, and it's one of 3 Eurofighters in the UK actually. The other 2 are Rage at Adventure Island in Southend-on-Sea in Essex, and the other being Solar Ride at Thorpe Park in Surrey. Both Rage and Solar Ride being located in England, here in the UK, rather than Wales. I'm sure you knew that, but just thought I'd point it out to maybe anyone who's watching from elsewhere who may not have known that. Yeah. The smallest Eurofighter in the UK, that's 72.2 foot tall, and then Soar is a custom layout Eurofighter at Thorpe Park. I can see why they chose the custom layout for that, because it has the dark ride section at the start, and then it goes into a bit of a coaster layout, and that's the longest of them, and it's the second largest at 100 foot tall. But the largest of the Eurofighters in the UK does actually happen to be Speed, and it's actually the only Gerstlauer Euro-Fighter 600 model ever manufactured. Gerstlauer haven't manufactured any other 600 metre models. The majority of the Eurofighters that they've manufactured have custom layouts, and then some make use of the other lengths, but I'm not going to go into detail into that because it's not really relevant. But some facts about the ride: it's 1,968.5 foot long, which is basically equivalent to 600 metres. It's reached speeds of 59 miles per hour. It's 114.8 foot tall. It's got 2 inversions, and another thing to note about these Gerstlauer models is they all have drops larger or steeper than 90 degrees, so beyond vertical drops. Speed has a 97-degree drop. Rage at Adventure Island also has a 97-degree drop, and Saw the Ride at Thorpe Park has a 100-degree drop. But they can have even steeper drops than that. The steepest Eurofighter in the world actually has a drop of 121.5 degrees, something like that, I believe. But yeah, in terms of the elements on this ride then, as is the case with all Eurofighters, this Eurofighter has a vertical chain lift. Well, the majority have anyway. You've got a loop, that's your first inversion. You've got a heartline roll, which is another inversion. But before that, you've actually got an overbank turn, and before that, an airtime hill. And we're talking about those elements a bit more in a minute. You've also got a helix at the end of the ride after the heartline roll, which actually comes after a mid-course that the ride also features. But in terms of off-rides, then, as you'll be able to see on your screen, there's not a lot, to be honest. It's kind of just placed in a field. There's not really much to talk about there. And then the queue line is also kind of just a path with some fencing, which also kind of just goes for a field. It's as if they just... It's a bit like Planet Coaster, essentially, where you've loaded up like a new world in Planet Coaster, or new park, should I say, and say you've loaded up like the grassland, you've used like the grassland environment, something like that, and you just got this massive base like field, and then it's literally like the coaster's there, and then the path just goes through. It's on a bit of a hill speed towards the back of Oakwood, but yeah, there's not much to say about that. And then in terms of the ride experience itself, I put a POV on screen now, which you'll have also seen in the Kamali video. Unfortunately, no on-ride filming on Hulk, as I explained there. But yeah, you pretty much leave the station, you turn to the right, you go up the vertical lift hill to 114.8 foot, so basically 115 foot. But yeah, and then you go over the top of that. You've got your 97-degree drop, where you drop down, and it's really intense at the bottom of that drop. Actually, you go into an airtime hill, where you get some nice airtime. I believe it's ridiculous. It's like minus 1.3 Gs or something like that. And then at the bottom of that drop, the first drop, I mean, you're reaching G-forces above 4 there. And you know what, to kind of reinforce how forceful those elements are and how it's quite intimidating when you're up there for the first time. It's the first time I'd ever done a roller coaster with a vertical lift hill doing that, and when you come over the top of there, it is intimidating if you've never done one before, because of the vertical drop on the other side. But yeah, I mean, here's some footage now of me just being terrified and then hitting that airtime hill and then just being so happy to get so much airtime. I know, definitely one of the highlights of the channel for sure. That I listen back to that POV and I'm just like, yeah, I think I was over exaggerating it a bit, but yeah, it's definitely one of the highlights for sure, and something that people have definitely picked up on. But yeah, and then you've got that overbank, which is basically a 180-degree turn pretty much into the loop. Get some nice force there, and then up into the mid-course brake run. You go through the heartline roll, and then you got actually I forgot to mention a bit of a turn to the left, and then you go into that final helix, and then you hit the brake run, and then you turn right into the station pretty much. And that speed, nothing to note at the exit either. Station's not really got anything to see, it's just a covered over station really. But that's all there really is to say about Speed No Limits. But don't get me wrong, it's a great coaster. But yeah, on to rating it then. For those of you who haven't watched one of my recent reviews before, I basically rate each ride I review out of 5, and I call them thrill points that I score them by out of 5. There's 4 categories, and those are intensity, smoothness, ride elements and presentation. Intensity being how intense the ride is, because I do like intense rides. Smoothness, how smooth the ride is, because if a ride's rough it can hinder the experience. Ride elements, how good is the variety of and quantity of ride elements. I do take quality over quantity, but you know, how good are the elements overall in terms of it being a good coaster in this case. And then presentation, how well does the ride look on and off rides. So yeah, let's get into it. Intensity then. Speed is an intense coaster, as I mentioned previously. It's only a short coaster, it's not got many elements in it, but it's an intense coaster. And yeah, especially at the bottom of that first drop, as I said, and into the airtime hill, the dramatic, is that a right word, dramatic kind of change in force, you know, it is dramatic, you know, and that kind of adds to it really, but yeah, it's very intense. I wouldn't say it's a 5 out of 5 intensity when I consider how intense Hulk is. That's the only ride to score a 5 out of 5 so far. But it's definitely a high score because it packs a punch. You know, the loop as well. The helix at the end is also somewhat intense. So it's 4 out of 5 thrill points from me. In terms of smoothness, people generally complain that, or a lot of people do anyway, that Gerstlauers are rough. I mean, take the Smiler for example, which is a Gerstlauer Infinity coaster. The Infinity model is essentially has the same sort of features as the Euro-Fighter model, however it's a newer model which basically has larger trains, because the Euro-Fighter model is basically a single car train with 2 rows of 4 allowing for 8 riders per train, and the Euro-Fighter, the Infinity trains tend to be like 16 to 20 people per train. They tend to have like 4 cars each having a single row pretty much. So it's mainly the capacity is the main difference between a Euro-Fighter and an Infinity coaster. But people complain the Smiler in particular on the back row is rough. A lot of people say Soar at Thorpe Park is quite rough. This is quite controversial, some people don't agree with them, and I believe it can vary from day to day. I've only ridden Speed on one day, but I found Speed to be smooth, and people have said that that's rough in the past, but I found it to be pretty smooth. However, it did depend what seat you were sat on. If you were on the back row of 2, there was a bit of a noticeable rattle, and that also applied to end seats. A little bit of a rattle, which did kind of, it was enough to sort of make the ride a little rough, but I mean, overall, it was a pretty smooth ride. So I'm probably gonna give it a 4, to be honest, because it's not silky smooth, but there was no head banging from what I remember, just a bit of a rattle, really. So yeah, I mean, 4 out of 5. Yeah. In terms of ride elements, I think this ride has a very good variety of ride elements, considering it's only 600 metres long. You know, you've got the vertical lift beyond vertical drop, you've got airtime in there with that airtime hill, you know, you've got a helix in there to provide some good positive G's, you've got 2 inversions, you know, it's got everything really that a coaster should have. The only thing I would say is that it could be a bit longer, you know, and some of the Gerstlauer coasters are, but you got to consider space, cost, you know. It cost 3 million to build Speed, and I mean it's the tallest and fastest roller coaster in Wales, and the steepest as well. So it's a really good investment for Oakwood, but you got to consider £3 million is a lot for a park that's that small. It doesn't get that many visitors. When I went, they were saying it was a busy day, but most of the rides were walk on, apart from the odd one. But yeah, they can't be making a ton of money compared to these bigger parks. So 3 million's a big investment for them. And you know, obviously, as I mentioned before, I hope that they're not hit too badly financially by this. I mean, they're going to be hit financially, but I hope that they're able to continue to operate. You know, like all theme parks, with what's going on at the moment. But when it's all sorted, but yeah. So yeah, I'd say, you know, if it's a bit longer, maybe add another inversion, because Rage and Soar actually have 3 inversions. Despite the fact that Rage is 361 metres long when you add the helix to it, it's got 3 inversions. I mean, it's ridiculously short a ride. It's really compact. But I'd love to get out there to Adventure Island one day to ride it, but I don't know when that'll be. And then Soar's got 3 inversions as well. So it'd be nice if Speed add another one. You know, it's not unusual for Eurofighters to only have 2 inversions. There's the odd Eurofighter that has only 1 inversion, not here in the UK, but yeah, elsewhere. But I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5 because it's got everything it needs. It's just that if we had more of that, it'd be even better. And then finally, presentation. This is where the ride is let down a bit. I don't feel like I can really credit it much here because there's nothing really special presentation wise. You know, it's just in a field. You've got a basic queue line, which isn't a cat-up end, but it's just a basic path leading up to the air gates at the station. You know, basic covered up station. But yeah, can't really credit, so I'm going to have to give it a 1, to be honest, because there's nothing really there for me to comment on. It's not that it's ugly as such. Well, it doesn't look amazing, but you know, you can go under the coaster, but it's just I can't really credit it, to be honest. Yeah, because there's nothing special presentation wise that's been done with it. It's just kind of been put in a space, so I'm going to have to give it a 1. I know it sounds harsh, but yeah. So that gives Speed a total score of 13 out of 20 thrill points. So scoring in between Kamali at Flamingo Land and the Incredible Hulk at Universal's Islands of Adventure, which is accurate to how I rate it. It's a good coaster. It's just the only real flaw with it is that they could have done something presentation wise, although that's not too big a deal. My main thing with Speed really is that you know, I'd wish it was a bit longer and features a few more elements. But what it does have, it does the job well. It's to the point. It has what it needs to be a good coaster, and yeah, it's in my top 10. As you'll know if you've watched my top 10 rides in the UK. I'll put a card up here in the top right, so you can go and see that if you haven't already. Something else I forgot to mention then is that Speed actually shared the world record with 2 other Eurofighters for owning the steepest drop on a roller coaster in the world when it opened in 2006, but that's since been beaten. But yeah, just another interesting fact then. So next week on Wednesday at 6 PM we're going to have another top 10 video. I'm not going to tell you what that's going to be. I'm going to leave it a surprise. And then, because I'm alternating the ride reviews and top 10s on Wednesday, and then in 2 weeks' time we're going to have another ride review, and then Saturday at 6 PM is going to be a reacting to video, the first video in that series. So stay tuned for that. Put your thoughts in the comments below on Speed and possible ride reviews you'd like me to do in the future. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video. As I mentioned, subscribe if you haven't already by clicking the button below to make sure you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. And yeah, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.